a car drives into a Black Lives Matter march. Gunshots leave a protester dying in the street.
Felt like I was right there. He was just trying to hold on to his life.
The victim carried a rifle. The shooter claims self-defense. We look at the larger issues in play, from gun laws to how police protect the people who protest, and how lawmakers could address calls for change. Hello, thank you for joining us for this special edition of State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and this week we're joining you from downtown Austin, where 1 week ago, a Black Lives Matter protest march led to a confrontation, gunfire, and ultimately a young man losing his life. The story made headlines across the country, and it's bringing up issues with an impact far beyond this street corner. This is where it happened. Witnesses say a car drove from 4th Street onto Congress Avenue right into a group of people marching. Video shows a crowd gather around the car. The driver said a man in the crowd pointed a rifle at him. The driver also told police he pulled out his own gun and fired in self-defense. The shots killed 28-year-old Garrett Foster. He was marching in the protest while carrying an AK-47 type rifle. He did not fire the weapon. Foster had been pushing a wheelchair for his fiancée, who was also part of the protest. The man who fired the deadly shots is Daniel Perry. That's according to his attorney. Perry claims he was working as a rideshare driver when he came across the group of protesters. So far, no charges have been filed in Foster's death. Our investigator Avery Travis takes a look at how state laws about self-defense might come into play.
3 guns. A rifle police say Garrett Foster may have pointed at a driver. Deadly shots fired by that driver. And more gunfire. Another person told police they shot at the car as it drove away.
Here you had what essentially amounted to a shootout at one of the busiest intersections in Austin.
Texas law allows for the open carry of long guns and allows a driver to have a loaded handgun in their car, even without a permit. Ed Scruggs leads Texas Gun Sense, an advocacy group fighting for tighter restrictions.
Perfect storm of weak Texas gun laws coming together.
But CJ Grisham with Open Carry Texas, a gun owners' rights organization, says laws wouldn't have changed that.
Trained gun owner, and I don't mean training by the government. The government doesn't give this training. I'm talking about people going to the range, people watching self-defense videos, would have known that you don't take a gun into a situation like that.
Grisham argues the only reason to have a gun is self-defense.
You'd probably be justified in defending yourself under the Castle Doctrine if deadly force was put upon you first and you're in your car.
Criminal defense attorney Steve Tolan says he can't speak to this case specifically, but there are a few required criteria anytime someone uses self-defense as their defense. You can't be the instigator, and you can only respond with the same amount of force used against you.
Words alone can never be justification for using deadly force upon somebody. You know, if you point a deadly weapon at somebody, that's a second-degree felony.
But he noted a car can also be used as a deadly weapon.
Accelerating with force, going through a crowd, you know, that's a very different situation that somebody might be justified in pointing a firearm in a moving car.
Avery Travis for State of Texas.
You just heard the attorney in Avery's story talk about a Texas law commonly known as the Castle Doctrine. It gives you the right to use deadly force in your home, business, and car. You're allowed to stop someone in the process of committing a crime or to prevent that person from running off. You do not have to retreat first as long as you have a right to be in that location. But the attorney also said that motives matter and every self-defense case is unique. Right now, Austin police say that the driver and another individual who fired at the car have been released pending further investigation. Foster had been marching with a group known as the Ramos Brigade. They're named for a man who was shot and killed in April during an encounter with Austin police. It started with a 911 call claiming Ramos was in a car holding a gun on a woman. After the shooting, investigators found he did not have a gun. This week, police released body camera footage showing the moments leading up to that deadly confrontation. Our Aaron Cargile found the video shows a tense situation escalating quickly.
So we'll go, I'll have my rifle out. Anybody else that's got rifles, we'll keep a good distance from them. Don't try to pin them in. If they got a gun, I don't want to do that.
At 6:36, 5 minutes after the 911 call, 8 officers met outside the Rosemont Apartments to discuss their plan.
Get your rifles ready.
At 6:40, officers pulled into the parking lot.
See your hands! Right now! Hands out!
After 30 seconds of instructions, Michael Ramos, without saying a word, began exiting the vehicle.
Michael Ramos, you're going to listen to everything we say.
Ramos stepped out of the car.
I want you to lift up your shirt from your shoulders. Turn around. Slowly turn around in a circle. Slowly turn around in a circle. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Stop. Michael Ramos. Michael Ramos. Michael Ramos. Hey, listen to me, man. Hey, relax. Relax, Michael. I need you to turn around for me.
At this point, Ramos places the car door between himself and most of the officers.
Turn around for me. I'll explain it in a second.
Ramos, keeping his hands up, then started yelling. Ramos then directly argued with the officers. Within seconds, things escalate.
I'm going to impact you.
Impact me for what?
Walk towards us. Comply with us. Comply with us. Tactic. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Hey, do not move. Turn off the car. Turn off the car, Michael. Don't do it. Get out of the car. Michael, get out. Hey, get out. Leave. Stay on the ground. Do not leave.
In the exchange, Officer Mitchell Piper fired one less lethal round at Ramos, hitting him in the hip. Officer Christopher Taylor fired 3 rounds from his rifle as Michael Ramos drove off, killing him. For State of Texas, I'm Erin Cargile.
After the video came out, I spoke with a professor at the University of Texas School of Law who's an expert on police and transparency. She said that releasing video like this can lead to community trust, but it can also bring new scrutiny that could have implications statewide.
The police department has been quick to say that these redactions or edits do not affect the depiction of events presented in this video, but sometimes that might be a little hard to believe, especially if you are critical of the police or maybe there's mistrust already, correct?
I think it's certainly right that in an atmosphere of mistrust, in an atmosphere where there's sort of an increased tendency to take police accounts of their own activities with a grain of salt, that there's going to be predictably less trust, less willingness to sort of take police at their word. I do think it's important to say that there are some legitimate privacy interests that any governmental organization has to account for when they release public information. And so there absolutely are, at least, you know, in theory, in the law, legitimate reasons to redact video or other documents relating to a particular incident.
Do you expect that there might be a larger conversation on the state level when state lawmakers come back to the legislative session in January?
Well, my understanding is that may in fact already have been in the works, that lawmakers who in the last session were behind efforts to repeal some of the limitations on transparency, some of the carve-outs from the Open Records Act. We're planning to again introduce legislation to do the same thing. What the scope of that will be very interesting to see, and what will happen in terms of the current political winds meeting the resistance to those changes that boiled up in the last legislative session will be very interesting to see as well.
I also spoke with the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas. They have already started working with state lawmakers on legislation, not only surrounding transparency with law enforcement, but also emergencies, modern times, and open records responses. That could include the dead suspect loophole. Our investigative team has been digging into that for the past 2 years. You can see our reporting online now. Just click on the link to our Denied series with this story on your station's website. keeping their distance, why officers are giving protesters more space, and why that could make it more difficult to keep people safe in the streets. And later, we look closer at the man gunned down during a protest for justice. What motivated him to march while carrying a rifle?